You are listening to the Intrepid radio program with Scotty Roberts. Intelligent Talk.
Well, happy Thursday evening, folks. Welcome to this, another exciting broadcast of the Intrepid radio program with me, your host, Scotty Roberts, right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. That's ODYSY1.com. For those of you who are listening outside the stream, come on over to Odyssey Radio, check out all the goodness, see the schedule, and have a good time over there. Fill your listening hours with fare from Odyssey Radio. You can also see this broadcast over on my YouTube channel, and that's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. And you know what? You can also go to just youtube.com/Scotty Roberts without the Mr., and it'll get you to the same place. Join the Intrepid family over there in the live chat room during this show. You can share your ideas about what's being talked about. You can also make some good acquaintances and friends and connections over in that chat room. So come on over and enjoy yourself. So welcome to today's show. And there's something I want to talk about today, again, that's a little different, but I want to ask you about hero worship and about heroes, how we establish heroes in our lives. What makes a hero? Do you have heroes? Can you name your hero right now? I mean, some of us, if we're asked off the top of our heads and we have to think about it, it might mean that we didn't really have one or haven't really established one in our heads. But if I asked you, who's your hero? Maybe you'll come up with a politician. Maybe you'll come up with a sports player or a movie celebrity or a religious figure. You know, there are people who say, Gandhi is my hero, and even if we didn't know him. And somebody will say, oh, well, Ronald Reagan is my hero, or Barack Obama. These were my heroes. Or you might say, you might come up with something completely different. Most of you who listen to me and have listened to me for a long time know that I have some pretty old entrenched heroes. One of my heroes was a fictional character off of television, Captain James T. Kirk of the Starship Enterprise. We've talked about that many times. He was always my hero, and the good captain, and so I liked him. But I've got other heroes as well. I have a hero in history. Thomas Jefferson was one of my heroes. And a hero doesn't mean necessarily that everything about their lives, whether they're fictional characters or non-fictional characters, real historical people, doesn't mean that you agree with everything in their life. Sometimes we gloss over things about their lives that we don't like, but there are certain things they have done or they have accomplished or that they stand for that make them our heroes. And so, who's your hero? And let me start off by asking, why are there so few heroes? Heroism isn't an easy thing, but there might be more heroes than you think. And where are all the heroes is a question we've got to ask. If you look out there and you say, who are the heroes? Are there heroes that you have? Are you a hero to someone else? There's a very pointed question you have to ask. Why are there so few heroes? It's a good question, and it deserves some good thought on our parts, especially given how much of our world is rife with poverty, famine, violence, natural disasters, tragic accidents. We need heroes more than ever. So where are they? Why do they seem to be in such short supply around us? So let's explore 4 different reasons. Why, 4 possible reasons that there aren't as many heroes out there. Pardon my cough. It's still nagging. My doc told me it's going to linger for about 4 to 6 more weeks. So hopefully I won't come down with anything else in the meantime. And it'll clear up by the time it's supposed to be spring here. So here are 4 reasons that we don't see a lot of heroes. Number 1, to be a hero, you have to learn to be, get this, a deviant. Now, deviant is usually a negative word in society. Has been for a long time. You can think of deviance and the way it used to be defined and the way it's defined nowadays. But there's a psychologist, Phil Zimbardo, and he uttered this line, and he's right. He said, "Heroism requires people to depart from their normal world, to cast aside conventional ways of behavior. Heroes aren't ordinary, they're extraordinary." Or extraordinary is the way we say that word. Extraordinary. Examples of heroic deviance permeate our culture. Look at, again, fictional characters. Harry Potter was hardly a typical student at Hogwarts. Jesus of Nazareth was a countercultural rebel, if you will, who defied the prevailing order of things. Batman is hardly normal by any definition. Everyday people who become heroes display a willingness to behave freakishly. And I think that that's a great way to define a hero. We don't think of them as being freakish, but when you delve below the surface of what makes a hero, they are freakish. They act differently than the rest of society. And that's what sets them apart. Number 2, heroes must often overcome psychological barriers. Oh my God, look at Batman. That dude is a messed up psychopath, but he's got control of it. Psychologists John Darley and Bibb Latané studied the bystander effect, they called it, which refers to the failure of people to help in emergencies when others around them could potentially help. You see it all the time now in the news where somebody's getting beaten by somebody, by a group of thugs, and everybody's standing around with their iPhones taking pictures of it. Oh, I got to catch this so I can make a viral video on my YouTube or on my Facebook page. And so people stand around. They're the bystander effect. People tend to diffuse responsibility and assume that others should do the heroic work. It's a type of psychological laziness that's engendered simply by being in a large group or a society. Now, here's the hard truth of it. Being subject to psychological pressures or social forces that encourage inaction is no excuse for failing to help somebody who needs it. There are barriers to heroism that can be broken down when we summon the moral courage to do the right thing, even when it's hard to do the right thing. Are you the person who will stick your neck out? Will you defy the laws of society and be that freakish person who will say, "Put your goddamn phones away. I'm going to step out here. Step out and help this guy." And you put yourself in harm's way. You put yourself in the fray. Now, many times, it doesn't have to be physical violence that you're fighting. It could be something, it could be bullying. It could be words. It could be actions and deeds of others. Do you stand up or do you sit back and kind of melt back into the bushes because everybody else is around and let somebody else do that? Do you know what makes heroes? The people who defy that. The people who step out. I always say that I was cursed with a justice streak in me. I used to, I had one old employer a long time ago said, "You're a lightning rod." And what they meant by that was that I tried to stand up for people. I tried to stand up for the people in my department when I was a creative director that needed standing up for. I tried to always in life, when I was a youth pastor, teach the kids in my youth group, stand up for the people that can't stand up for themselves. I think that is what makes a hero, when you take that kind of responsibility on yourself. Now, sorry, that sounds really bad. I'm not trying to elevate myself as being a hero. I'm just saying that these are qualities that heroes have. They will step out from the crowd. They will take the blows, whatever they may be, physical or metaphoric. and they will push for justice and doing the right thing. So, number 3, heroism. It involves risk. It involves potential danger. Emergency situations offer all kinds of challenges to us. Darley and Latane, who I mentioned earlier, they have noted that emergencies have several qualities that make it surprising that any heroes emerge from them at all. First, emergencies are rare, they're unexpected, and this rarity means that emergencies can easily catch us off guard and leave us seemingly paralyzed. Now, I'm going to tell you something about myself. If I was in an emergency situation, I don't want to be one of the crowd that might be caught up in the emergency. I would rather step up to the front and help control, to a certain extent, whatever emergency is hitting us. So that is something I like to do. Do you do that? When you're in a situation, will you step out? Will you put your neck out on the line? Do you do the things that would be heroic to other people? When you think about, remember on 9/11, there was the plane that was taken down and went down in the field? That's because there were 2 guys, and I believe it was on their cell phones, that they said, look, we don't know what's going to happen, but we got to stop this. And they stood up and they confronted the guys with the box cutters. They charged the cabin. And we don't know exactly what happened after that, but we do know that they took that plane down in a field rather than fly it into New York City. Those are heroes. Posthumous heroes, but they're heroes nonetheless. And second, emergency situations are often dangerous, just like that. To be heroic, we sometimes have to be willing to put our own life at risk to help others. Now, it doesn't always come to that, and that isn't always the defining moment of being a hero, risking your life. But risk and vulnerability, making yourself vulnerable, is the thing that makes heroes to other people. Third, there are emergencies that require immediate action. You can't stop and ponder the pros and the cons of intervening or consult with trusted friends or hop on your cell phone and go, there's this emergency situation. It's happening right around me, and I need to know if you think it's a good idea that I take my time and put my own neck on the line and take the risk to step in, and you get the picture. We have to act quickly sometimes. And this is why you've got firefighters, paramedics, police that are all the heroes that put themselves, they run to the danger in order to help others. Sometimes you have to act quickly. And those are the 3 characteristics of emergencies that make effective responses to them very difficult. So heroism, that third point, involves risk and potential danger. Now, heroism requires knowledge and preparation. Now, where we say it can sometimes be spontaneous, a fourth characteristic of emergencies is that they differ widely from each other. Saving a drowning person requires a completely different set of skills compared to the act of saving a heart attack victim. Now, by the way, if you were in either of those situations where you needed to help save somebody who's drowning, or save somebody who's suffering a heart attack, or save somebody that's choking, say in a restaurant or a family gathering, are you prepared enough to be able to step in and do that? A choking victim needs help from someone trained to perform the Heimlich maneuver. A person who stops breathing needs CPR. And somebody who helps revive them needs CPR training. So countless times, heroes have reported that their training, their preparation, enabled them to save a life. So you can have the best intentions in the world, but if you lack the skills to save someone, you render yourself useless in an emergency. Now, does that mean we all need to rush out and take CPR courses or learn how to swim and save a person who's drowning? Or learn the Heimlich maneuver? That's probably the easiest one on the list. Do we have to learn how to deliver babies to help the woman who's having a baby in the back of the bus or the taxi cab? These are all specialized skills. Now, those are things you can certainly do and add it to your own personal resume of things that you're trained in. But you don't necessarily have to go out and do that. But what if you're ever faced with that? The hero is the one who's prepared. So, heroism isn't rewarded by society, not all the time. In fact, it involves great risks, potential dangers, a willingness to be deviant, to be freakish. And it takes good preparation. It's a wonder that anyone steps up to be a hero. Yet every day, people do choose to act heroically. And that's the good news. There may be more heroes than we think. They're just faded into the background right now until the moment comes where they're called upon. When I've asked people to name their heroes, just like I did for you at the beginning of this program, over half the heroes named are usually parents, teachers, coaches, firefighters, healthcare workers, law enforcement, and the military. All these people are our heroes. We don't always think of them as heroes, but they are. These are the unsung heroes of society. They're found in great abundance, and they're all around us. Look at Rocky Stucci. He's a hero. The man is a firefighter. The man has helped save people's lives. He's an unsung hero out there. I think we should sing him up a little bit. But these are people that rarely receive any kind of broad recognition or fame. They do their heroic work quietly behind the scenes, day in and day out. This is Rocky's job. His job is being a hero. Did you know that about him? There are also people like the guy we mentioned earlier in this broadcast, Phil Zimbardo. The Heroic Imagination Project was his project. And he trains every day people to become heroes. Matt Langdon, who we mentioned, at the Hero Construction Company, visits schools to transform children into heroes. There was recent research by one Elizabeth Heiner, and she suggests that kids who watched Langdon's presentations showed a significant increase in their levels of courage, even 30 days later. And do you know what? Do you know that sometimes there are kids who are what we would consider the bad eggs, who we would consider the bullies, that when they are confronted with the option to choose to be a hero, they change themselves? I know I had one kid in my youth group that I wouldn't call him a bully, but he was an ass. He was so hard to deal with. His parents made him come to youth group, and he was one of those guys that constantly being a problem. He never really beat anybody up, but he bullied people with his attitude, and it's the kind of guy he was. I thought, dude, many times, dude, you have got to get a handle on this. Well, it was about 5-6 years after I was a youth pastor, and I had moved on to a different state, and I was doing some other things. It was in advertising. I got a call from this kid out of the blue. He said, I looked up your number. I had to find you. You had to do a little digging, but I wanted you to know, I was really rough on you back in high school. He said, but I want you to know, he says, I went on and I went to Bible college and seminary, and I just graduated seminary, and I'm taking a role as a youth pastor. And he said, I wanted you to know that you inspired me to do that. Kids who are the kids that you might least expect it are the kids that are inspired by heroes. Do you think bullies don't have their own heroes in their own private little world? If you just encouraged them to be heroes, they would step up. We can equip future generations with the tools to become heroes. In fact, we can all become heroes right now, today, if we're prepared for the challenges mentioned and we're willing to do what it takes to help other people. That's all it takes to be a hero. Be prepared. Be freakish. I think most of you have that online already. You got that going for you. But can you try to become a hero Or does it just happen? Like many positive outcomes in life, heroism is not something you can just choose. You can prep yourself for it, like I've mentioned. You can you can be freakish. You can be the standout. But our troubled world desperately needs more heroes. And this leads to the question of whether we can choose to become a hero and how much fate, luck, circumstances, forces beyond our control just make heroism happen. It's an issue about heroism that's both psychological and it's philosophical. Can we receive heroism training and do what it takes to transform ourselves into heroes? Or is heroism something that's done to us? Way back in 1966, back when I was a 5-year-old kid, a highly underrated psychologist named Leslie Farber noted that most of the best psychological states that we strive for cannot be willed by us. We can't will those things into existence. These are things like happiness, wisdom, courage, resilience, even a good night's sleep. How many of you have those things that can just by force of will make yourself be happy, or wise, or courageous, or resilient, or rested? I can do fun activities, but I can't will happiness. I can go to bed at 11, but I can't will myself to sleep. So I would say that the same is true for transforming ourselves into heroes. We can do things to make heroic transformation more likely, such as, attend a hero roundtable conference, get involved in some of these hero-making things, events that are out there. And we can participate in hero training or engage in mindful meditation in much the same way that we can make sleep more likely by going to bed on time, trying to get a good sleeping habit. But like falling asleep, we can't will heroism to happen. A few years ago, there were Thai Navy SEALs who risked their lives to save a group of soccer boys who were trapped in a cave. Now, these Navy SEALs didn't become life-saving heroes until circumstances presented themselves that allowed for heroism to happen. Those SEALs had the training, and they were ready for sure, but most SEALs don't have a soccer team. And we should be thankful that most training goes to waste. Imagine the bloody carnage of a world where every trained hero uses every bit of their training, the things they prep for. So in short, there's some end states that we cannot will to happen. The circumstances come upon us. They have to happen as byproducts of various behaviors, experiences, and processes, some of which we can control and some we can't. I like what Captain Kirk said, risk. Risk is our business. So one of my favorite quotes was penned by George Patel. He said, "Mere words have something of a quicksand about them. Only experience is the rope that is thrown to us." Think about that for a second. We can't vow to become courageous and resilient. We have to go through tough times. We have to acquire courage and resilience. Experience is the rope that's thrown to us. And we have to grab that rope, even if maybe especially if, the experience is painful. Look at all the things that you have gone through. There are people sitting here in this chat room tonight, people who listen to this show who I know. You've gone through painful, tough times. You have baggage. You have garbage in your life. Have you ever stopped for a moment to think that all the rough things, the tough things, the bad things, the abuses, and all of these things that have happened to us are the things that have prepped us for becoming a hero, for being the lifeline to someone else. Instead of wallowing in, oh, poor is me, I had these problems in my youth, or things that happened to me, why don't you look at that and say, I don't need the attention for that. I don't need people to throw me sympathy about my past and my past bad things that happened to me. I need to take those and morph those things into being the life rope for someone else. Have you ever thought of all your experiences combined are the things that have woken you up, that are making you aware? And if you live in the now with them, those are the things that allow you to be able to help others. Doesn't mean we don't have crap when we're going through them. It just means these are the things that make us who we are. And what are you going to do with that? Stay down all your life, or are you going to use that to make yourself a hero? Got more to say on this, but we're at the end of the first segment, believe it or not. I got to cut out for a couple of minutes. Sit tight, stay tuned, we'll be right back.
Raise your flask, aim your rifles high. I've had a dream I've seen, we three should have no fear at all. You'll die in Kenora, Billy, you Jim in Winnipeg, and I will end my days in Montreal. These people come to see me in my bedroom, with faces dim and names I can't recall. Some woman with a golden ring, she comes to comb my hair. Then she dresses me and walks me down the hall. I can still put one foot before the other if someone points the way for me to go. Today the sun is shining and a crowd has gathered round. They put circles of red flowers on stones. Raise your flask, aim your rifles high. I've had a dream I've seen, we three should have no fear at all. You'll die in Kenora, Billy, you Jim in Winnipeg, and I will end my days in Montreal. Jimmy Rankin stood behind me in the tunnel, spat on his bayonet and wiped it with his hand. He rocked from heel to heel, blew out his cheeks and whistled, while we waited for the signal to advance. Jimmy Rankin was only 20, and we thought him an old man. He said he'd fathered children by the score, by girls back home in Winnipeg and girls in Calais. And he bragged, by God, there'd be 100 more. Raise your flask, aim your rifles high. I've had a dream I've seen, we three should have no fear at all. You'll die in Kenora, Billy, you Jim in Winnipeg, and I will end my days in Montreal. Billy Whitefish from Kenora, jet black hair and eyes like coal. We all called him Chief behind his back. He never smiled or laughed or joked or spoke that much at all. He just sat and smoked while we waited to attack. They poured shells over our heads into the hillside. In 30 yards our kitten boots were full of mud. But as we made the ridge, Jimmy went down on both knees, and he coughed into his sleeve, and there was his blood. Raise your flask, aim your rifles high. I've had a dream, I've seen we three should have no fear at all. You'll die in Kenora, Billy, you Jim in Winnipeg, and I will end my days in Montreal. The last sound I ever heard was an explosion, and bodies flew like apples thrown by boys at play. When I could see again, I was alone. Jimmy wasn't there, and a crater marked the hillside where he'd lain. Billy Whitefish from Kenora wound up in a German trench where he captured their machine gun all alone. And he held them off until his ammunition was all spent. Then they swarmed around and they hacked him to the bone. Raise your flask, aim your rifles high. I've had a dream, I've seen we three should have no fear at all. You'll die in Kenora, Billy, you Jim in Winnipeg, and I will end my days in Montreal. Now every day I still remember what I told them. My two friends who that day from this earth were torn, and the craters and the trenches where they died now bear the names of the cities and the towns where they were born. Raise your flask, aim your rifles high. I've had a dream, I've seen we three should have no fear at all. You'll die in Kenora, Billy, you Jim in Winnipeg, and I will end my days in Montreal.
Welcome back, gang. Thanks for sitting on through the break. This is Scotty Roberts. You're listening to the Intrepid radio program right here on the Odyssey Radio Network. And you can watch the simulcast of this in video and join the live chat room over on my YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/Mr. Scotty Roberts. Or you can type in /Scotty Roberts. It's going to get you to the same place. I actually just discovered that this morning. I didn't realize I'd had it set up that way. So either one of those will get you to the right place. And we're talking about heroism. And I want you to, I want to just really go right back into this without any fanfare. Talking about heroism, what makes heroism? What makes us a hero? And we ended by talking about the things that have happened to us in our lives, those difficulties, those tough times, those abuses, those things that have happened. Those were not all given to us so we can enter into our later life and cry about them and weep about them and say, oh, give me sympathy because I had a tough childhood. Those were given to us so we can reach out to other people. So we have the ability to be the lifeline for somebody else. And so we can't vow to become courageous and resilient. We have to go through tough times to acquire courage and resilience. Have you ever stopped to think, this is what makes me who I am? And because I've had these things happen to me, it makes me courageous. It makes me resilient. It gives me the ability to help others. Experience is the rope that is thrown to us. And people are going to need your experience in those areas to help them out. You know, you may not ever know when that's going to happen. It could be spontaneous. It could be that something comes upon you. You face an event, a crisis, a circumstance, a person who needs help. And all of a sudden you can find that you have this wealth of information that you can draw on. This wealth of experience. Even though the experience might have been painful. And so we were talking in the first hour. Farber was one of these researchers. He said that we live in a society that confuses these two realms of the will. It results in rampant anxiety and depression in people who try hard to make wonderful things happen that cannot happen when we want them to. So think twice before making either happiness or heroism your goal. The hero's journey happens to us. It's not something that we plan. In fact, it's like I just said. We don't plan for these things. We're ready. We see what brings us to the place where we can be used correctly in a situation. But these things don't just happen to us, or we don't plan them. They just happen. The hero's journey just happens. If we're in charge of the planning, we'd try to avoid the painful journey altogether. The ego cannot be in charge of our destiny. We have to wait for heroism to happen. And sometimes it never will, which is really okay. You don't have to be a hero. But there are some people who willfully put themselves in the position of being heroes. I think the people in the military, the people, as we've mentioned, who are firefighters and police and medical workers and what's the word I'm looking for? EMTs. All of these people, and there's probably some I'm missing, and if you're one of them, I don't mean to miss you. I'm just pulling out generalities. These are people who train, and they're ready to stand in the gap. They're ready to do what's necessary. So, yeah, we can decide to do things that make heroic growth more likely. And it includes all these things that I just talked about. But let's be honest. Participating in these activities doesn't guarantee that you're going to become a hero. But you are, to a certain extent, already heroic for prepping yourself for those possibilities or inevitabilities. So remember, experience is the rope that's thrown to us. Get out there. Experience life. Don't sit at home waiting for meaning and purpose to just happen. Do things. Go places. Risk being uncomfortable. 20 years from now, you'll regret more the things you didn't do than the things you did do. So cast off from the safe harbor. Set your sails to the trade winds. Explore, dream, discover. Be uncomfortable. Do things and go places that make you freakish, that put you in a place. Now, it's not necessarily to become a hero. It's to live your life and be ready if heroism ever calls. Perhaps a little of this essay will help you. Can you try to become a hero, or does it just happen to you? Rather, the truth may be closer to you. You can try to become a hero, and it might just happen to you. You can't plan for it, but you can prepare for it. Knowing all this, we can decide, I'm going to prepare to be a hero, whether it happens or not. And I think we should all do that. And I have so much stuff here that we could get into. And we got a lot of time to do it in this hour. So I want to talk about, are heroes and villains really just the victims of circumstance? Claims that heroism and evil are equally banal just rest on double standards. Listen to this. And let me ask you, what moves a person to become a hero or a villain? I know I had a fifth grade teacher that said to my mom once, a very long time ago, we're talking the late 60s, early might have been 1970. She said, Scotty is an exceptional student, but I'm a little concerned because I don't know which way he's going to go. He's either going to make a magnificent president of the United States, or he's going to be the next Al Capone. That's what she told my mom. And my mom was rather proud of that. I am too, looking back, as a fifth grader, that somebody thought I had exceptional qualities. So the question is, what moves a person to become the President of the United States or to become the Al Capone, the mob boss? What moves a person to become a hero or a villain? Do people perform heroic actions? Acts which involve genuine risk to themselves because they are special people? Or is it just a matter of banal circumstance? Commonplace. Being in the right place at the right time. Do people who perform evil actions, do so because of flaws in their character? Or are they just victims of an evil system that corrupts the innocent, inducing otherwise good people to do terrible things? And now those who subscribe to situationalism, let's call that situationalism, such as Phil Zimbardo, who we quoted in the last segment, have argued that given the proper circumstances, virtually anyone could either become a hero or an evildoer, regardless of what sort of person they are. However, a closer examination of Zimbardo's writings on the subject revealed that apparent double standards for good and evil, in that evil actions are attributed to external forces on a person, imposing upon a person, whereas heroic actions are attributed to the internal qualities that empower a person to resist evil. Is that the truth about this? Are evil people evil from inside, or are they evil because of external forces that have made them evil, made them make those choices? The same with heroic. Are they people who are heroic because it comes from the goodness of their moral character? Now, Zimbardo's own writings on the subject suggested that heroism is far from banal because heroic action involves doing the brave thing in the situations, when the more commonplace response would be to do nothing. And since heroes take responsibility for the consequences of their actions, does that not mean that evildoers are responsible for their choices too? I'm thinking of if you ever watched the series Band of Brothers about, and I don't remember any of the names off the top of my head, but it was World War II, and it followed the exploits of these characters, these real-life characters. And after the episodes, they would interview some of these real-life men who were still alive. And at the very end of the series, we were talking yesterday about skin orgasm. I'm getting that right now. I'm getting the chills just thinking about this. The guy who was the captain throughout the series, at the end of this series, when they were interviewing him in the after interviews, he ended it by saying, a question was posed to him, and he says, my young granddaughter asked me, "Are you a hero, Grandpa?" And the man, he lowered his head. You could see him overcome with emotion. And he said, I told her, no, I'm not a hero, but I sure served with a lot of heroes. And so, are these things that come from who we are? Because not every one of those guys was a great guy, but they're heroes in his mind. So sometimes people have to choose between good and evil, but how do they decide this? One of the more generally accepted theories in psychology is that behavior results from an interaction of the internal features of a person, their personality, their motives, their values, and the external features of whatever the situation might be. It's that intersection, that intercoursing, if you will, of internal values with external features. And these might be things like social pressures to behave a certain way. But according to the school of thought called situationalism, there are situations that are so powerful that they can compel nearly everyone to react in certain ways, regardless of their internal dispositions or even their moral values. This view is particularly associated with the man, Phil Zimbardo, who I've quoted several times now throughout this talk, who claimed that a large body of evidence in social psychology supports the concept that situational power triumphs over individual power in certain contexts. I said that like 15 years ago. Now, I'm not sure what body of evidence exactly he's referring to with this statement, as a meta-analysis of about 100 years of research in social psychology found that the average effect size of social influence on behavior was actually smaller than the effect of someone's personality. So, Zimbardo has asserted that powerful situations can induce good people to do evil things. In particular, he's claimed that abusive behaviors that occurred in the infamous Stanford prison experiment and at Abu Ghraib prison, you remember some of the abuses that took place there and the heads that rolled because of it? That those can be explained in terms of external situational forces rather than the personal characteristics of those who were involved. How many people do you know where you say, I can't believe he did that. That guy's a good guy. What did he do that for? A situation can explain, situationism, can explain not only the extremes of evil, but the extremes of good as well. And Zimbardo said, the banality of evil is matched by the banality of heroism. Both are not the consequences of dispositional tendencies, meaning what's going on inside of your disposition, the things you bring to the table with your personality. They're not special inner attributes of pathology or goodness residing within the human psyche or in the human genome. But both emerge, good and evil, in particular situations at particular times when situational forces play a compelling role in moving individuals across the decisional line from interaction to action. So he's contending that good and evil doesn't necessarily come from what's inside of you. It can be caused by external force. So in this view, situational forces move people, pushing some people to do evil, others to turn a blind eye to evildoers, or to film it just on their iPhone and not step in and do anything to help, while still others act heroically to right the wrongs that they encounter, at great personal risk. So in an article arguing for the situationist explanation, there is one Zeno Franco and Zimbardo stated that some situations can inflame the hostile imagination, propelling good people to do bad deeds. You ever had that happen? Oh, I'd look to strangle that guy. Well, if I could get my hands on that guy who committed that act of wrong against that young girl, I would kill him with my bare hands. I've said that myself. Could we be propelled into doing evil deeds, even though our moral compass tells us that that's not what we would normally do, but the external drives us, the situation drives us? Something in that same setting can inspire the heroic imagination, propelling ordinary people to do extraordinary things toward actions that their culture at a given time determines is heroic. Look at William Wallace, freedom. Gloriously played by Mel Gibson in the, believe it or not, 1995 movie. That's 25 years old now. Can you believe that? There are kids that are alive today in college, graduating from college, who were born after Braveheart hit the big screen. But William Wallace, while it was a good movie, it was an inaccurate one. But William Wallace was a guy who was a hero in Scotland. But was he just an ordinary guy? He was just an ordinary guy that was driven to extraordinary deeds. So in the language of social psychology, the situationist view attributes behavior mainly to externals, saying that rather than internal forces, it's the externals that cause you to be either the hero or the villain. Hence, heroism and villainy are unrelated to individual differences in personality or even conscious decisions based on one's own values. Now, this seems to imply to me a rather passive view of human behavior, in which people are largely at the mercy of circumstances outside themselves, rather than rational actors capable of making choices. However, it features how the person can be disregarded in favor of situational forces. Then it's very difficult to explain why it's the same situation that can elicit completely opposite responses from different people. There is still that internal factor, because not everybody responds the same way in the same event. And this would seem to suggest that situations elicit either heroic or villainous responses in a random way that cannot be predicted, or that situational factors alone are insufficient to explain the choices that we all make in difficult circumstances. An alternative view to this is that situations don't so much suppress the individual personality as reveal the person's latent potential. Therefore, a dangerous situation, for example, might reveal one person's potential for bravery and another's potential for cowardice. So, within you, without you, outside of you, the incongruity within the situation. Most psychologists believe that both situational and personal factors need to be considered in understanding why people behave the way they do. Franco and Zimbardo, they actually acknowledged this in one of their articles. They said, just as in the Stanford prison experiment and the Milgram studies, the situation which we haven't described, so you can set that aside, the personal characteristics of each person that's caught up in the situation interact in unique ways. And that's a remarkable admission, considering that Zimbardo and his colleague responded with hostility and dismissal to the suggestion that the results of the Stanford prison experiment could have been influenced by the fact that people with certain personality traits might have been more likely to volunteer for such an experiment than others. It's the internals, guys. It's the internals. And so this effectively absolves all evildoers of responsibility for their actions. And it says that heroic actions are not necessarily the product of what is inside you. Although heroism is supposed to be a banal response to circumstances, being in the right place at the right time, Franco and Zimbardo and their analysis of the heroic imagination indicates that it has a great deal to do with the development of moral character. It's your internal moral compass that drives you to be heroic, or drives you to be a villain, evil. And more particularly, heroes are people who take full responsibility for the consequences of their actions. And such heroes can even emerge in an evil barrel. Like what happened at Abu Ghraib, where the military guards abused the prisoners. And people can respond to the very same situation in either good or evil ways. And when you do evil, the situation is blamed. Yet when others do heroic deeds at great risk to themselves, it reflects the strength of their character, their personal character. So this seems pretty likely to be an unbalanced and self-contradictory view that appears to reflect ideological biases more than objective analysis of what makes a hero or a villain. So clearly, if an ordinary person has the capacity to become a hero and who assumes personal responsibility for what they do, then surely ordinary people who commit evil also bear responsibility for the choices they make. That's kind of where I'm at. Perhaps one of the things that distinguishes heroes from other people is that they do not accept excuses for interaction, such as blaming their own behavior on external forces that they can't control, such as being in an evil barrel or an evil seed. This is not to deny that horrendous situations influence behavior, only to reiterate that the individual choices of the actors in such situations need to be taken into account. So, it's interesting what drives one to be heroic. I believe it has a lot to do, mostly to do, with your moral compass and what you value in life. Many times it's forced upon us, thrust upon us by the circumstances. But evil, I think, can be the same way. It's a choice that people make. What's the choice you make? So we got to end it there. We're at the end of our time. Maybe we'll talk a little bit more about the heroic tomorrow. I don't know. But I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. We'll be back after this 23-hour break. Hang on.